Hello again and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for taking the time to join us today. It's a great pleasure to see such strong interest from professionals interested in learning and improving how governance and compliance managed in their organization, especially in these days with the high increase of the cyber attacks. My name is Ahmed Abdelaziz. I'm a sales manager in ThreatsView. This session is organized by ThreatsView, which is a cybersecurity vendor providing risk operation center platform. Our focus on helping highly regulated organizations to simplify GRC and cybersecurity operations. That's why our slogan is Make It Simple. So today we will be an educational session focusing on learning something new, not into product demonstration. We had worked with different sectors such as government, financial, oil and gas, retail, and others in GCC, and our headquarters in Singapore with a strong presence across the region, including our offices in the UAE and Qatar. I would like to take a moment to thank our partner, ALM, for their support and collaboration to make this session happening. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Shashank Sinha. He's the Principal Security Solution Consultant at ThreatsView, bringing more than 12 years of experience in cybersecurity with a deep experience in GRC and security operation in regulated environments. He has been working extensively with frameworks such as PCI-DSS, ISO 27001, UAE NEST, and he is recognized among the top 100 cybersecurity leaders in Middle East. We are also joined today with Mr. Satya Vengopal, a GRC expert and security consultant in ThreatsView. He will be supporting us during the session, and he will be available to address any technical questions you may have. Time to start learning and start learning something new. We will be spending 45 minutes walking through practical insights on how to move beyond traditional compliance approaches and build more effective GRC program. After that, we will have a very short demonstration for ThreatsView platform and followed by open Q&A section. So please feel free to prepare your questions. You can write down the questions in the chat and we will answer all questions and inquiries by end of the session. With that, I will hand over to my colleague, Mr. Shashank. Hello, Mr. Shashank.
Hey, Ahmed. Hi. Thank you, Ahmed. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome and thank you for joining in. My name is Shashank Sinha, and I am a Principal Security Solution Consultant at ThreatsView. And for the next 45 minutes, I'll be having a genuine conversation about something that I think, most of us feel every time audit season comes around. This is not going to be a product presentation or a checklist of framework requirements, not really. I'll be purely talking about why compliance programs in UAE and GCC are, structured in a way that creates the illusion of security, and we'll take the questions and at the end of the session, as Ahmed mentioned. So if you have any questions or you have any specific queries, feel free to jot it down in the chat so that at the end of the session we'll be taking the questions. Our agenda today will be ultimately trying to understand how to move from an audit ready to a secure GRC program. There are 4 modules that I'll be talking about. Each module will help us understand the problems, how to create a unified control library in order to fix the multi-framework problem, what will be the path to continuous assurance, and then a practical execution wherein how we can implement this to ensure a proper roadmap for GRC maturity. I'll also be showcasing a video of ThreatsView platform of how ThreatsView can take care of a lot of areas what we'll be discussing in today. And at the end, we'll all be receiving an exclusive GCC multi-framework compliance reference guide, by which if you follow that guide, you will be able to achieve what we'll be discussing today. So let's begin. And even before we start, I want to ask a question. Think through it. Uh, what is your compliance program today? Do you feel that your compliance program is making you more secure, or you are just audit ready? Because there is a difference. And the real difference between these two things is what I want to show you, that what is the difference that looks in practice. I'm not going to talk about, just theoretical concept. I'll showcase practically what is the difference actually. If we notice the screen, I have taken two examples of the past, wherein one of the example, incident A, in 2023, there was a private hospital group in UAE which completed their ISO 27001 surveillance audit with zero major findings, nothing, no major findings at all. But then 6 weeks later, they suffered with a significant data breach. And the root cause which was identified was an unpatched VPN appliance. Now, the vulnerability was already identified. Vulnerability was publicly documented as well. It was available for almost 4 months. But then their patch management control was just certified as implemented in their Excel sheet. The evidence was just a spreadsheet, which was even looked into quarterly. So there was no live process. And because of this, patient records got exposed and a regulatory notification to the UAE Ministry of Health was required. Practically, they passed the audit, but then the control did not really work for them. Similarly, incident B, if you notice, in 2024, one of the GCC banks regulated passed their annual cybersecurity assessment in Q1. Again, no significant findings. And then in Q3, they disclosed that a ransomware incident has happened, because of which their operational systems were affected for almost 72 hours. Now, in this case also, they had a proper functioning compliance documentation available, but then they did not really have a functioning continuous monitoring. Both of these facts ultimately are true simultaneously. I would like you to focus on this word preventable. Remember this, hold on to this, because ideally, these cases are not really edge cases, they are actual structural failures. These can be prevented, and we'll see how. Based on our understanding, based on the experience that I come with, these incidents are not the result of negligence. These are the result of, a structural problem, a problem that affects almost every organization in the GCC, which is managing multiple frameworks simultaneously. We know that almost every organization or people in this session who have come in from different organizations, right? We all know that we have to take care of ISO 27001 or PCI-DSS or UAE, or if we are in Qatar, there are Qatar related frameworks. If we are in Saudi, there is SAMA. Every organization has to go through at least 2 to 3 different frameworks. And let me walk you through what that problem actually looks like. So when we have multiple frameworks, we need to first understand why and where the problem exists. So, I mean, I want to be very clear about something. Before even we go to these three failures, we all need to know that this is not really a people problem. People who are managing compliance programs in GCC organizations are really doing great. They are working really hard. This is not a people problem. This is a structural problem. And the way these programs are designed, it almost guarantees that the gap, what we just saw earlier, will exist. Let's talk about the three different failures that, or the problems that results into the failures of the GRC programs. The first one, manual process. We all know, and I mean, if we are really truthful to ourselves, we all know that almost every organization, the typical GCC compliance program is running on a spreadsheet. You know, we are sending emails to different team members, collecting evidences on shared drives, OneDrives, and ultimately evidence is collected how? By asking colleagues, please share the screenshot, please upload the files. And this is not only something that results into slowness, but it is that the evidence becomes stale the moment you are collecting it, because a screenshot of your user access review, let's say in the month of January, really proves nothing of what actually your user access review looks like in the month of April or May after 4 5 months. In the month of January, yes, that evidence was accepted by an auditor, great. But then after 4 5 months, today, that doesn't really gets accepted by a threat actor if you're not continuously monitoring it. There is almost 50 to 65% of time spent by the GRC team just on evidence collection. I mean, does that sound familiar? The second failure is basically the duplicate work across frameworks. Now, if we are operating under multiple frameworks, if let's say we have ISO and CBUAE, considering UAE country as an example, we are almost certainly doing the same compliance work twice, because the access control requirement across these two frameworks are substantially identical. The incident response requirement again overlap by almost 70%. So many organizations today maintain separate evidence folders, separate audit preparation cycles. In fact, in some cases, we have seen separate teams as well, separate people as well to manage the same underlying controls. 70 to 80% of the frameworks overlap, and this is not a small inefficiency. This is actually the majority of your GRC team's annual output, which is being spent on duplication. The third failure is basically no real time visibility. Today, if I ask you directly, at this moment, do you know what is your organization's compliance posture? Not like, based on the last audit when it happened in the month of January, not what was the situation during your last audit, but what is your compliance posture today, right away? Can we answer this question like within 5 10 minutes without even opening a spreadsheet? Something again to be thought about, because in most of the GCC organizations, honestly, the answer is no. We in real time as of now might not be able to answer our compliance posture. Compliance status is known only at the point of audit, and as soon as the audit finishes, it starts deteriorating, because we know new systems will get deployed, new accesses will be created, some access rights will be drifted here and there, certain patches will be deprioritized, policies will age, and ultimately none of this is visible until the next audit cycle, which might be happening after 6 months or 12 months from now. So if we are, what we are doing right now is once a year, most organizations, we know our compliance posture only once a year, and that again is the problem. Now these are the three structural failures which creates the gap. Why it is fundamentally different from what most people think compliance is measuring. These are the ones that is existing in almost every organization. Now this slide is basically the intellectual core of everything what we are going to discuss today. If you read both these slides, the first one, which is specifically to address the compliance question, if I ask today, do we have the control in place at the time of audit? So if the audit is happening today and you have a control in place, if you answer yes, you are passing the audit. Perfect. But when it comes to security, is the control working right now against today's threat environment? If we are able to answer this yes, then this will actually reduce your risk. These are not the same questions, and the organizations which I spoke about, the incidents initially which I described, they answered this question as yes, so it was correct for them. But then they had no mechanism to answer the second question at all, because there were no such tools or processes to monitor in real time, but they just wanted to satisfy the auditors. And that is why we say we need to fix the system and not really the staff. People are doing exactly what the system asks them to do, but we need to understand how do we fix the system. So this was about module 1. Now let us talk about what fixing the system will look like. Starting with the fastest and highest return change most GCC organizations can make, and simplifying their multi-framework environment. Module 2 will be simplifying the multi-framework problem, and I want to start by making sure that everyone has the same picture of what GCC regulatory landscape actually looks like right now. If we look at this table, these are the primary frameworks that ideally, in UAE or in GCC organizations we currently operate under. SAMA is for Saudi, CBUAE, UAE ISO NIST again, global frameworks that is applicable to all the sectors. Now, if we look at the core focus areas and read across the rows, we'll be able to understand specifically people who have the GRC background and who are in this session with the GRC background will be able to relate and understand that these 5 domains appears in almost every single framework on this table, and it is almost identical. Yes, different clause numbers are there, maybe the language is a little different, but the requirement which is underlying is exactly the same. So if you're complying with ISO 27001 and CBUAE, you're already doing approximately 75% of what UAE IA is looking forward to. And if you add SAMA, let's say for Saudi, the incremental new work is like, I believe, less than 20% of the total control set. So you are not really managing four separate compliance programs. You are managing one program with four reporting outputs. And the only question is whether your GRC structure reflects that reality, or maybe, fighting against that reality itself. Let me show you the solution to that duplication. It is called as Unified Control Framework, and this is how it looks like and how it works. So basically, Unified Control Framework has three steps that I want to walk you through each one of them. The first step says identify your overlap. Now, what does this mean? This is basically the analysis step, right? We need to take our applicable framework and then lay their control requirements side by side. For every requirement, we should ask, is there an equivalent requirement in my other framework? For example, in the access management domain, the answer is yes in every framework, and we can map them explicitly. The second question, or the second point, is to basically build one internal control. So instead of maintaining separate access control requirements for CBUAE, separate for ISO 27001, and separate for UAE, we should write one internal control statement. Basically, you write it to satisfy the strictest version of the frameworks that you are applicable to. If let's say CBUAE requires quarterly access reviews and ISO requires a semi-annual, I'm just taking an example, then your internal control requirement should be required quarterly. So you write one statement, strictest version, which will satisfy all others. And then we also need to evidence only once and reference that everywhere. This is where the efficiency actually is realized. You get one IAM report, one quarterly access review, export from your Active Directory, and that will satisfy your CBUAE, ISO, SAMA, UAE, everything simultaneously. So you collect it once, store it once, and then refer it four times for four different frameworks, right? If you see, this is one of the practical examples that I have mentioned in the slide for access control. CBUAE CR4 is the same as ISO 27001 Annexure 5.15 to 5.18, which is the same as UAE Domain 3, which is access management. Now, if an organization has to take care of CBUAE, ISO, as well as UAE, only one evidence file is required to satisfy these three controls within these three frameworks. This will ultimately reduce our efforts, and the result of applying this across your control set within one audit cycle will ultimately bring 40 to 60% of reduction in your compliance efforts. It is not really something that we as a vendor we are claiming. We have worked with a lot of organizations and we have seen this as a structural outcome of eliminating duplicate work, because it really reduces a lot of manual efforts, manual work that the team is doing for the same thing again and again. One more thing I want to mention here, we have put a practical reference guide, the framework mappings, the overlap analysis, step-by-step approach, for building your own unified control library. So we'll be sharing that with everyone registered today at the end of the session. So stay with us. Now, we saw that, okay, a unified control framework is solving the duplication problem, but then is it still solving the timing problem? Because the fact is compliance is measured at a point in time, but not continuously. And that is module 3, where the biggest operational shift happens. Before I walk you through this slide, let me again talk about a scenario. A federal government entity in UAE scored very well in their biannual UAE IA assessment. And 6 months after the assessment, 3 user accounts with privilege access remained active. Now, yes, it is human error because of which it remained active. These accounts were belonging to employees who already have left the organization, obviously, but nobody was aware of it. Nobody knew about it. And the access review control, which passed during the audit time, was because the team actually used a clean, manually prepared report for the audit. But there is no continuous monitoring of access changes that is happening. Later, one of those dormant accounts was likely used by a former contractor and was attempted to access the system. And this breach basically discovered that these are the accounts or these are the IDs which are still active. So it was not really by the entity's own monitoring. Now the access control passed during the audit, but then it was still not working for almost what 6, 7, 8 months because the IDs still existed, right? And this is what the absence of continuous monitoring actually looks like in practice. If we are not having continuous monitoring in place, such scenarios will occur in each and every organization. Now look at this table. If we look at the left column, this talks about what ideally is done if the compliance is considered as an annual program. And the right side talks about what compliance looks like if it is considered to be a continuous program. This is how GCC organizations mostly operate today. Evidence is just collected before the audit, controls are just tested once or twice a year. Compliance is basically considered as a project with an end date. But if we move to a continuous compliance program, this will give us the assurance that we are always ready. The evidence will not be something collected just once before the audit, but it will be captured and collected all year round, right? And the team will be focusing more on actual risks and actual remediations instead of just focusing on manual evidence collection. Compliance will always be in a state of always on instead of considering it as a project. This shift from the left to the right ideally doesn't require doubling your team. I mean, people might think that we might have to have more members added in the team, but that is not the reality. It just requires changing what your team does. Instead of collecting evidence, they need to monitor exceptions. Instead of preparing for audits, they need to manage risks. Now, these are the key components, basically 4 key components, and these are practical components of continuous monitoring. One, a centralized repository where all the evidences links to controls. The second, live data sources, your IAM system, vulnerability scanners, SOC data coming from SIM solutions, all that generating evidence automatically rather than people uploading screenshots. Then a risk-based frequency cadence, monitoring cadence, wherein let's say critical controls should be weekly monitored, high severity risk controls should be monthly monitored, or medium should be monthly monitored. Low severity risk should be quarterly or biannually monitored, right? And then the last one, named ownership, automated ownership. Every control should be having an owner who is accountable to keep the evidence current, with automatic notifications if the cadence is being missed, if the frequency is being missed. So when we have these four things in place, our GRC team will shift from spending almost 60% of their time on evidence collection to spending the time which is actually risk work. And this is again operational outcome that we'll see, operational outcome of continuous assurance, that will come into picture, that will come into reality. Now, what we have talked about continuous monitoring and why it matters, I want to show you a practical example wherein what does the starting point look like, what will be the first steps, and module 4 will be something that I'm going to give you a roadmap on how you can take back and use this. Practical application. How to practically apply on whatever we discussed so far. I'm not really going to give you, a 12-month transformation project, or I'm not going to say that uh, you'll get a starting point which your team can start from coming Monday. No, it is not that I'm going to tell. Uh, Before we even start the roadmap, very important aspect is to understand the mistakes. So there are 3 to 4 mistakes that generally organizations make when they try to improve their GRC programs. Avoiding these mistakes is actually as important as following the steps, practical steps itself. And these are very common mistakes. We have seen this across a lot of organizations. People think that, we can start with a platform, a GRC tool will automate everything. If the process itself is broken, the tool or platform, even if it automates, it will automate your broken process itself. So you need to first understand and design the process. We should avoid treating GRC or compliance as an IT project. Compliance ownership belongs to risk, legal, compliance leadership. This is not something that belongs to the IT team. So we need to embed that from day one itself. And the third mistake is waiting for a perfect framework. That's not going to happen. Start with your, let's say, top 10 or top 20 highest risk controls. If you have a functioning 20 control program, that will beat a 200 control spreadsheet every time. I would actually like to show you an Excel which, so if you see this Excel sheet, this is an Excel sheet which we have prepared just for the demonstration purpose. And this is how your master control framework or a unified control framework will look like if you will be able to create this based on the guide that I'll be sharing at the end of the call, at the end of the webinar. If you see, these are the internal control IDs that has been created. Controls are differentiated by domains like access control, identity management, asset management, vulnerability and patch management, incident detection. And then for each domain, each control this has been mapped to different frameworks. A monitoring frequency has been applied. What is the evidence requirement has been mentioned, and who is the control owner as well is defined. This is something that an organization should be having as a master control framework. So as of now, what we do, we have one framework for UAE, we have one for ISO 27001, we have one for SAMA, we have four different Excel sheets. Instead of having four different Excel sheets, make one standardized master control framework Excel sheet, map your controls. So MFA shall be enforced for all remote access, privileged accounts, and systems classified confidential or above. Now, this control is present in UAE as well, CBUAE, SAMA, ISO, NIST, PDPL, everywhere. Now, if we are fulfilling one evidence, that is taking care of all the frameworks. Maybe every framework is not applicable to your organization, but maybe two out of these five or six, or three out of these five or six, or any other frameworks, whatever. The ultimate thought is create one master framework like this, which will reduce your manual efforts to a lot extent. If you see the framework overlaps, it very clearly shows that these domains have these many different controls which is getting overlapped. How many controls are reflected in CBUAE, whether it is all the controls, partial controls. You'll have to create something like this. So let me come back to the presentation. Now we were talking about the practical application. As I showcased the Excel sheet just now, we need to build a unified control list, organize organize that particular control list by domains, access control, incident response, patch management, not really by frameworks, as I just showcased. And that will become your master inventory. Then, second step, you need to map the frameworks to that control list which you created. For every control, you need to tag which clause in which framework it is satisfying, and that will become your cross reference table. So when a auditor asks for evidence, you can filter and retrieve it from that single Excel itself. Third, centralize your evidence, wherein you restructure your evidence storage by control IDs, not by frameworks, not by audit years. Follow a uh, standard of naming the evidence, and name it by your control ID, by your unique control ID that you have created. This single change will eliminate the duplication. This will also result into not struggling last minute finding the evidence, where is it kept, because ideally in your SharePoint there will be 100 plus different evidence snapshots, screenshots, policies kept, and last minute you will be scrolling through to identify which one is the evidence for this specific control. And the last one, very important, you need to define the monitoring cadence and you need to assign the ownership to the right people. A control owner should be named for every control, and a frequency should be set always depending on the severity of the control. Critical, make it weekly. High, make it monthly. Quarterly for medium, and for low it can be biannual or annual. So you need to define what happens when evidence is not submitted on time, and that is also really important, because if you define it, only then that escalation rule will create accountability. Ultimately, if you are able to do this, you are able to implement, you will be almost falling in this implementation timeline. Within the first 2 weeks, you should be having your control inventory ready. The next 2 weeks, you will be able to have the evidence repository. The 4th to 8th week will be your executive dashboards within the spreadsheet that you have created. You'll be able to create how many controls are passing, how many controls are not having an evidence. All that can be done. You can create it through a pivot table within the Excel. And ultimately all this is, again, whatever we discussed is achievable. This is not really a 1 year program. This is something that can be achieved within 3 months uh, starting point, which will transition your GRC function actually from a reactive to a proactive function. Everything, whatever I walked you through, the unified control library, the cross framework mapping, the evidence centralization, continuous monitoring, this is the actual program design. And this is how ThreatsView as a platform operationalizes it. Let me show you what that means in GCC context. ThreatsView as a platform connects every capability you see on this slide directly back to a problem we named earlier in this session. Because this is not really a feature list that has been showcased here, this is an answer to everything that we have been discussing. ThreatsView provides you real-time visibility as we discussed in module 1, where it gives you dashboards showing compliance percentage per framework, per domain, per control, updated always continuously. It automates evidence ingestion. It can provide you automated evidences from your live system data, same IAM, EDR, AD, vulnerability scanners, etc. It performs the cross framework mapping. So you submit evidence for one framework, it will satisfy all the other frameworks that you are applicable to or that you are falling under. Definitely comes with pre-built GCC content packs, so you don't have to struggle from day one. From day one itself, ThreatsView ships with pre-built content packs like UAE, CB, UAE, SAMA, Qatar NIA, Qatar CSF, and a lot more. So you don't really need weeks to build the content packs. And ultimately, it provides you a proactive visibility on gap analysis, wherein it gives you automated gap analysis, identifying unmet requirements immediately and converts them into tracked remediation tasks. So if you are not having ThreatsView, this is what your situation is right now. But with ThreatsView, definitely you can reach to a automated, controlled, um, and your compliance posture will really be in a great state. You'll always be audit ready. You'll not be surprised at all if an surprise audit also starts. You'll be ready for that particular audit. Let me just play a quick video which showcases the high level capability of ThreatsView.
Welcome everyone. Today, we're exploring the guided compliance module of ThreatsView. Once you log in and access guided compliance, this becomes your central control point. Here, you instantly access multiple frameworks: ISO 27001, PCI-DSS, UAEIA, SAMA, Qatar frameworks, and more. Everything is preloaded, pre-mapped, and ready to use. No manual setup, no complexity, nothing to build from scratch. You simply select the framework relevant to your organization, and ThreatsView automatically structures everything underneath. Let's drill down. We'll take ISO 27001 as an example. At the top, you get instant visibility into your compliance posture, overall readiness, compliant controls, partially compliant, non-compliant, and not started. Everything is clearly structured, categorized, and ready for execution. Now, let's go deeper. At the control level, each control provides complete context, description, requirements, and the exact evidence needed. You can immediately update the status: compliant, partially compliant, non-compliant, or not applicable. But here's the key point. Every status must be backed by real evidence. Now, for technical controls. This is where ThreatsView becomes powerful. It integrates directly with your existing tools. No manual effort, no chasing screenshots. ThreatsView connects to your systems and automatically pulls live evidence from your environment. No screenshots, no manual tracking. Evidence flows directly from your environment. This is what real continuous monitoring looks like. Controls are validated by systems, not by people remembering to update them. Now, let's move to one of the most powerful capabilities in ThreatsView: the control universe and the crosswalk engine. The control universe is your centralized master library. It brings together every control from every framework into one single place. No fragmentation, no scattered documentation. Everything unified. Whether it's UAE PDPL, ISO 27001, PCI-DSS, or any other framework, all controls are structured within a single, consistent model. Now, let's move to where the real value comes in: the crosswalk engine. This is where things get powerful. The crosswalk engine automatically maps controls across multiple frameworks, connecting related controls into one unified structure. If we search for a specific control in ISO, we can instantly see how it maps to other frameworks. That same control could align with UAE, Qatar NIA, QCB, and more. All of this happens automatically. This is how ThreatsView eliminates duplication. You're no longer maintaining multiple versions of the same control. Instead, you manage it once, and the platform takes care of the rest. No redundancy, just a single source of truth. And this is what a 40 to 60% reduction in compliance effort looks like. Now, let's move to risk management. This is where compliance translates directly into real risk visibility. When a control is marked as non-compliant, a risk is automatically created in the risk universe. No manual effort required. You don't need separate tools. Everything is already connected. What you're looking at here is a consolidated risk register. All risks, regardless of framework, are visible in one place. No duplication. Everything unified. If we look at the first risk, this is the same control that was just marked as non-compliant. And as you can see, the risk was automatically created. Now, when you open the risk, you get complete visibility. You can proceed with risk assessment, select treatment options, define controls, and evaluate impact. Everything happens in one place. Once the risk assessment is completed, it moves into the approval workflow, and only after approval, the lifecycle is completed. This ensures governance and accountability. Now, let's move to audit management. This is where most teams feel the real operational pain during audit cycles. When an audit is planned, you can create the entire audit plan directly in the platform. Define type, scope, departments, and objectives. You can also onboard external auditors with controlled access. They see only what is required, nothing more. No spreadsheets, no unnecessary system access. Now, let's look at an example audit. As audits progress, issues are identified, assigned, and tracked. SLA tracking starts automatically. Owners update status, attach evidence, and approvals ensure proper closure. Everything is documented, tracked, and auditable in one place. What you've just seen is a GRC program that runs continuously, not just during audits. Frameworks are pre-built. Evidence is automated. Risk and compliance are fully connected. If you'd like to see this working in your environment, reach out to us at ThreatsView.com. We'll walk you through a tailored demonstration. Thank you.
So basically, there are three major takeaways of today's session. The first one, we all understand that compliance is a point in time, but then security is something which is continuously required. A compliance basically certifies that a control exists at the time of audit, but continuous assurance, verifying that it is working right now, is really important. The second takeaway is, we all know duplication is the biggest GRC inefficiency. We all have worked in different organizations wherein we see that duplication of different controls, because of the 70-80% of control requirements which overlap, results into a lot of manual efforts doing the same work again and again. And again, this is not something that we are really claiming. This is what we have noticed and witnessed when we worked with different organizations, and we have seen that this is actually a structural outcome uh, of eliminating the redundant work. And the third takeaway is basically, your team's value is not in collecting evidences. Honestly, I mean, that is the last thing that a GRC or a compliance team should be doing. Um, Ideally, your team's value is in identifying risks, challenging the control designs, advising leaderships on where the organization is genuinely exposed. Um, Automation handles the administration. Your team should be doing what automation cannot, like judgment, analysis, strategic risk management, etc. Now we have compiled a GCC multi-framework compliance reference guide. This guide basically is a practical step-by-step approach of what we discussed today, and everybody who has registered will be receiving this. Ahmed will be sharing this after the end of the webinar, and we'll be more than happy to have a deeper conversation about your specific framework situation, how you see ThreatsView can help in your environment. And you can reach out to us at threatsview.com, or on the email sales@threatsview.com, where we'll be happy to do a no obligation walkthrough tailored to your framework stack. Thank you for today's time, and we'll be happy to go to questions now. Anyone who has any questions, feel free.
Okay.
We can check. I think there are questions in the chat, I believe,
Yeah,
right?
we have only one question in the chat. Someone asking, does
Okay.
something like Vanta not do the same thing?
Yes. So Vanta is also into the same concept. Vanta also performs the same what we were discussing, but there is one specific difference that I would like to mention about ThreatsView. ThreatsView guided compliance is basically focused or prioritizing the operational risk integration over pure audit automation. Vanta does your audit or compliance, attempts to automate that purely, keeping just audit in mind, but ThreatsView prioritizes the operational risk integration. Basically, ThreatsView, helps you shift the focus from just, checking the box like, okay, yes, we are compliant, and we automate Vanta with your security solution or some solution, and it is gathering the information. That is fine, but ThreatsView actually gives you active security posture as part of our broader risk operation center. So today we spoke about ThreatsView only the compliance part, and that too very limited. The video showcased was a just 6-minute video which only talks about the compliance part. But overall, ThreatsView is a risk operations center platform which takes care of the compliance as well as the security risks or security management as well. As Ahmed mentioned earlier, or I mentioned, feel free to reach out for a dedicated demonstration, and we can show you the full capability of ThreatsView.
Exactly. This is one of the critical points for most of the financial and governmental sectors to have the solution fully on-prem, which is unique point in ThreatsView.
Right.
Super.
Any
So,
other questions? I think there are no more questions, I believe.
yeah, there's no more questions, and I think we are just on time. I hope, thank you very much first, Shashank, for the informative session, and I hope everyone get piece of information today and willing to invest more into GRC development, and we are willing to support and align with your requirements. So thank you very
Definitely.
much for your time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. Everybody will be receiving the guide very soon. And try to utilize that guide. See if you are able to build step by step using that guide unified control framework, and hopefully that helps. We are always there to support and help, so you can reach out to us as well anytime.